he was a psychologist, and I was fascinated by what he said. And I just thought, wow, this is interesting. And that night I dreamt about him, and I dreamt that I was telling him about this colonel that I had just met. I had never met a colonel in my life, and I just met this colonel. And this guy was a retired colonel. So the next day I get to the conference early, and I see him, and I tell him that I had this dream about him. And he says, tell me the dream. And I told him, and he said, what branch of the military is this colonel in that you met? And I said, I think military intelligence. And I know nothing about the military, like zero. And so I was like, military intelligence. And he said, I was in military intelligence. And as he said that, the cover of a book that had just come out that was called Psychic Warrior, and it was the history written by David Morehouse of this program that had just gotten declassified, that was a top secret psychic spying program that the US government had come up with an answer to the Soviets getting a lot of our military secrets during the Cold War. And this man defected with papers showing that the Soviets had a psychic spying program. So if they've got one, we got to have one.
They go to don't know that we had one for 20 something years, actually.
It was 20 years. And every single year they had to do a dog and pony show for the big brass and prove that it worked in order to get funding for the next year. And if they couldn't prove it, they couldn't get the funding. So they were funded for over 20 years. And so they definitely proved it. In fact, when Jimmy Carter was asked, what was the weirdest, like most bizarre thing as president? And he said it was when the remote viewers found the downed missing Russian plane. But anyway, so when I suddenly saw this book flash in my mind, I said, have you seen this new book that's out about psychics in the military? And he said, are you talking about Psychic Warrior? And I was like, yes, that's the book. And he said, I can't believe that you're asking me about that book, because I was a main character in that book. I was the psychologist in charge of like vetting the guys that would go into the unit. Well, then he's like really weirded out, because here this strange woman has a dream about him and then asks him about this program that he'd been in for 20 years.
And this was pre-internet, just so people know. This was not.
Well, it was the very beginning of the internet. This was 1996. And so the internet was new, pretty new.
But most people weren't surfing and finding the information like they are now. So it's not that you could have been just, looking on your phone.
No, in fact, I think I had one of those Nokia, look like little bricks kind of phone. He's like, oh man, we would have loved to have you in our unit. And I was just like, ah. And I was suddenly imagining, Men in Black coming to kidnap me. I was kind of freaked out. I was like, ah. So he says, when you get back home, go on the internet and see if you can look up remote viewing, controlled remote viewing.
Which no one would have known to look up then, because it's a lot of people, most people still don't know to look that up now.
Yeah. So when I got home, I tried and I found it. And the thing that came up was Lynn Buchanan's website. And Lynn had been a trainer in this top secret unit that had just only months before gotten declassified.
Military unit.
Yes.
Military intelligence secret program at the time, and for a long time after. And he was a sergeant, I believe.
He was a sergeant.
Okay.
And so he had a website that said, what is CRV? So I read it. And when I read it, what is controlled remote viewing? But it said, what is CRV with the initial CRV? But yes, and that stood for controlled remote viewing. And when I read it, it just suddenly was like, oh, this was what I've been looking for, because it was based in brain science. And basically it was based on the premise that all humans have a part of them that is intuitive.